Hello and welcome to the Swallows Charity Head and Neck Cancer Podcast. Join us on a head and neck cancer journey, presented by Derek Luthwaite.
Hello everybody.
And Chris Curtis.
Hello everyone.
We'll be discussing everything that patients and caregivers need to know about diagnosis, treatment, and so much more.
I'm CEO of the Swallows Head and Neck Cancer Charity, and I'm also a cancer survivor for nearly 10 years now.
And I became a caregiver when my wife was diagnosed with mouth cancer, and it certainly put me on a journey that I never expected to experience during my lifetime. Hello and welcome to another of the Swallows Head and Neck Cancer Podcasts. I'm Derek, and with me I have Chris. Hi Chris.
Hello Derek, and nice to speak to you again. It's been absolutely ages since we last spoke.
Yes, I know. We had some really interesting people on last time we spoke, but I tell you what, we're going to beat that today. We're going for the stars today with our guests. So let's just give our audience a little reminder. We've been talking generically about a treatment pathway for head and neck cancer patients. Some of the things, some of the hurdles that you may come up against during your treatments, and some of the hurdles that you may find difficult to overcome on your own. The important thing to understand, and our guest today will support this, is there are people and there are companies out there that produce some marvelous gear, some marvelous equipment, some marvelous medicines that are designed to help you get over your head and neck cancer issues. So let's not waste any more time. I am absolutely delighted on behalf of the Swallows to introduce to you from THOR Photomedicine, Randall Berkstead. Hi, Randall.
Hi.
And Paul Burns. Hi, Paul.
Hello, everyone.
Now, let's get this started with a quite easy question, really. And I direct this to you, Randall, if I may. Who are THOR Photomedicine, and what do you do?
Well, great question. So, THOR Photomedicine is a UK company based in Chesham, just north of London, and we do deliver a science called photobiomodulation, basically delivering certain wavelengths of light at certain powers stimulates healing in the human body. Kind of like UV light makes your skin turn darker. We know the body reacts to light. And so THOR's focus is on the medical applications of lasers and LED light to stimulate healing and relieve pain.
Oh, that sounds absolutely phenomenal. I have to tell you, I did spot on the website a little quote, but I'd already thought of this beforehand. This is Star Trek, isn't it? This is the doc doing the old laser thing on the side of the face, and then a few seconds later, everything's fixed. Is it really that quick?
It's the exact same. It just takes a little longer. But yes, it was predicted in Star Trek back in the 60s. And like many things, I think on Star Trek, it actually has become a reality. But yes.
Paul Burns, you're looking after the UK side of the operation. Is that right, as I understand it?
Yeah, but specifically looking at taking the treatment into the National Health Service. The National Health Service does not provide prevention. What we do is we attempt to prevent a particular side effect of head and neck cancer treatment, that being oral mucositis. And the NHS currently doesn't provide that preventative equipment, and we have it. And my job is to try and make sure the NHS takes it on so that every patient can get access to it.
I believe you do have approval for this. Is that correct?
We have nice guidance for photobiomodulation. So the National Institute for Clinical Excellence says that photobiomodulation is something that absolutely can be used. It is effective and it is safe for this particular treatment. Our delivery method is what we now need to show to people and say our delivery of photobiomodulation is affordable. It ultimately will save you money if you're a trust, because you're not going to be spending as much money on things like painkillers and such things for patients. And it's also extremely easy and quick to administer. Okay,
well, this sounds like a bit of a win-win all round for everybody. I want to know, Chris, why haven't you already been onto the NHS personally and got this sorted?
The impossible I do now, miracles just take a little bit longer.
Just to add on, the Multinational Association for Supportive Care in Cancer recommends this therapy for the prevention of mucositis. Like Paul mentioned, NICE has issued a guidance that this is recommended for this treatment. There's a growing library of scientific evidence for this treatment. We just received CE medical approval for this equipment specifically for the prevention of mucositis. So the momentum is building. It just, the medical community does not move quickly for safety reasons. But the great thing about photobiomodulation is it's incredibly safe. We've delivered over 30 million treatments with THOR equipment with no negative reported side effects.
Well, I'll aim this at Paul. I know you've dealt with Patient's Voice for an awful long time. You know, we've known each other for a long, long time. But just explain in basic terms for anyone that's out there that doesn't know what I know what mucositis is. I live with it through radiotherapy. So I think anyone that's had radiotherapy will know what it is. But there will be people listening to this thinking, what the heck are they going on about mucositis, and why does light help mucositis? So can you just in layman's terms, just explain what mucositis is?
The simplest description of oral mucositis that I've seen from a patient is, have you ever had a mouth ulcer? Anyone here or anyone listening will have bitten their lip while they've been eating at some point in their life. Oral mucositis is an ulceration like that, but across and through your whole mouth, and it can stretch down into your throat, right down. It can actually stretch all the way down through all your tubes, all the way down to your bottom. It's an effect of radiotherapy. It's a side effect of radiotherapy and chemoradiotherapy. So just imagine, I've actually got one at the moment on the inside of my front lip as a result of an Indian meal that I went out for last night, and very foolishly, after a couple of beers, wasn't paying attention to how I was chewing my food and ended up with a little ulcer on the inside of my front lip. It's really, really irritating. It's quite painful. If you have that across your whole mouth, through your throat, down where you're breathing, where you're trying to swallow, it's a debilitating condition for patients. It's an awful thing.
Obviously, this is a side effect of radiation treatment, as you've already said. Until you guys came along with this fantastic, easy, new, light method of treatment, how was it handled previously, or wasn't it?
So it's handled generally with topical anesthesias, kind of like put onto the sores to relieve some of the pain, or ingested opioids for pain management. Those were the mitigation factors, and some of the consequences of those strategies are that patients still end up on feeding tubes and other things to make sure that they can maintain their nutrition and their health. And so by keeping the mouth healthy, the patient isn't required to have the feeding tube to support their system. So there's a bunch of downstream benefits to avoiding this condition, in addition to just the pain and the discomfort that happens. One of the key ones that oncologists talk about is maintaining therapy, and the patient not declining therapy because of the pain. And then you get into mortality issues. So the downstream effects of preventing this condition can't be understated.
And I believe, from what I've read, obviously I'm not an expert on this and wouldn't pretend to be, but I do believe that this treatment, this form of treatment, not only eases pain, but has some tissue regeneration values.
I'll keep the biology conversation incredibly short. We increase ATP and decrease oxidative stress. And this mechanism really stimulates the body's natural healing process. So we all know that when a small child who's very healthy gets a cut or a sore or an illness, they recover incredibly fast. It's because their systems are so healthy and young and vibrant. As we age, our cells get less elastic and less able to handle trauma. And so what we're doing is we're basically jump-starting the body's natural healing process to help fight off these conditions. So if a patient does get sores, they're less than they would have had, and they'll recover more quickly.
This is science gone crazy in a good way. I think this is absolutely brilliant. Now, my next question is this something that has to be applied by a health professional, or is it something that can be done by the patients themselves at home? Paul, perhaps you can answer that one for me.
It does not need necessarily to be applied by a medical professional. It's incredibly simple to administer to a person. So the majority of people, presuming they're fully able-bodied and fully sound of mind, they will be able.
Unlike you, Derek, by the way. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did tee it up, Chris, so well done for knocking it down. As long as somebody is, fit of body, fit of mind, they will be able to administer it to themselves very, very easily. We're actually working at the moment to make sure that our literature that we give to patients and to clinicians is just describes what's needed on a step-by-step basis. And honestly, it's the simplest procedure, Derek. Anyone can do it. I can do it, so anyone can do it.
How long does it take? Is it a 30-minute, 3/4 of an hour? How long does a patient have to be on the treatment to make it effective?
So specifically for oral mucositis, we're looking at a 5-minute treatment plan at the moment. The treatment protocol it's going to form part of a lot of the work I do with the National Health Service to find out what the National Health Service is comfortable with. We think as we go in to talk to the National Health Service that our 5-minute approach is going to work for everyone, because we're not actually going to be using lasers. We'll just be using LEDs, and not using lasers means you remove a whole level of difficulty for the National Health Service, because having lasers means you've got to have a laser safety room. You have to be wearing safety goggles. But simply by using the LEDs rather than the lasers, and LEDs behave in a very similar way to lasers, by the way. In terms of the treatment, you can consider that there's next to no difference between two things, LEDs and lasers. So, short answer, Chris, 5 minutes.
So, you talk about, so this isn't a laser?
No, it is a light emitting diode. It's LEDs.
So it's just a light?
Just a light, which brings us back to what I think somebody said at the very start of this. I think it was Randall. It seems fanciful that light can possibly help, heal, prevent, treat. Light is something that we all live with every single day. But any one of us who's ever had a suntan or, God forbid, sunburn, which is a horrible thing, sunburn, will know that light can affect you. It can affect your biology. It can affect your body. So when you think of it in those terms, it suddenly starts to make sense that actually light can impact upon the behavior of cells in the human body.
I'm certain sticking a torch in your mouth is not going to do the job. You guys have got something a little bit more sophisticated than sticking a torch in your mouth and holding it there for 5 minutes. So can you just give us a bit of a description without breaking any trade secrets? We don't want to get into any of that, but tell us a little bit about what is it? What is this equipment? What does it look like, and how do you use it?
So the key from a science perspective, and there have been over 4,000 papers written on this and hundreds of clinical trials, is that the light is of one color. So the torch you talked about is multispectrum. It looks like white to our eyes, but it's all the rainbows of color that we see. And so we use two very specific wavelengths of light because the research has shown those penetrate human tissue, and they provide the stimulating effect that we're looking for on the human tissue. So it's not just sticking any light in your mouth. It's very specific wavelengths, and they're very, very powerful. So very bright and very specific wavelength. The specific treatment that Paul talked about for 5 minutes is we have a probe that's called a lollipop. It basically looks like a lollipop, and it goes into the mouth and puts light through the entire oral cavity. And then we have an external probe that delivers the light to the cheeks and the mouth, because this condition can result in sores on the lips and in that area. So there's an external treatment and then a treatment that's done inside the mouth as well. This
is painless, yeah, to the patient? Painless treatment?
Yes, yeah. No thermal effect. So people think of lasers and they think of James Bond and those, but in fact, we deal with lasers in our lives. The bar scanners at stores and other things are low-powered lasers that are very safe. So the light is very bright, but there's no thermal effect. It doesn't heat up, and it's very safe.
So I've looked through the website as well as obviously doing my research before you guys came on. But there's an awful lot of pictures with glasses. Why?
Laser. We do sell lasers. We do provide some therapies with lasers, different applications, primarily musculoskeletal, where we use a laser in our treatment methods. And those lasers do require wearing safety glasses.
So, to me, when I look at this, there don't seem any anywhere that it can't treat. If it's like can treat my mucositis, surely one of the big things I dealt with was lymphedema. I just think when you look at it, if it works on that principle, surely it works anywhere.
There are an enormous number of applications for photobiomodulation. From the point of view of treating cancer patients, head and neck cancer patients, where the body of clinical evidence lies is with oral mucositis. Hence, in the first instance, that's what we're going to be talking to the National Health Service about, because NICE, as we've mentioned already, say that it's recommended treatment for this condition, and we should always obviously be driven by the clinical evidence. That's a sensible thing for a company to do. There is limited evidence in lymphedema, and further down the line, it's something we will speak to the National Health Service about at some point further down the line. There's no question about that at all. We probably just need to grow the evidence base a little bit more, but they can help us do that. And there are applications for athletes to improve or tired, sore muscles. I've just watched a video of Justin Gatlin, who is a world famous 100-meter runner, who used what's called the THOR. We have a bed that you can lie on, and it delivers light to the entire body all at once. And Justin Gatlin used this THOR the night before and the day of running his personal best in the 100 meters. And it's one of the top 500-meter times of all time. And he we've got a video of him talking about how much he swears by how he felt once he'd stepped off that bed.
The Swallows Charity Head and Neck Cancer Podcast is designed to help and support both patients and caregivers.
Is this an expensive treatment, or is this something that you're confident that you're going to be able to persuade the misers who hang on to the purse strings at most NHS hospitals, and we have been talking about a few of those on one or two other podcasts, that you're going to be able to persuade them that this is a cost-effective, cost-benefit treatment?
I am incredibly confident, and I'm very confident for a few reasons. So, well, first of all, let's address the price thing. It's not what you would call cheap to you and I. However, to the National Health Service, in terms of the money they spend on, for example, opioids, so painkillers we've talked about for dealing with oral mucositis, the cost of missed treatment is absolutely enormous to the patient and to the National Health Service. We've recruited, Randall could maybe tell us a little bit more about this, but there is a consultancy actually doing some work for us to put together that cost benefit argument, to look at what the National Health Service spends on related items that help currently treat oral mucositis. And then if you compare it against a one-time purchase of a piece of THOR equipment to treat it, the cost benefit over a period of time stacks up really actually very, very simply, and it becomes a little bit of a no-brainer. The difficulty when you're dealing with the NHS, and you've touched upon it there, Derek, is the NHS is, as those of us living in the UK listening to this know, it is an absolutely enormous, mazy institution. It has conflicting wants and needs, and tying all of those things together, that's the really difficult bit. But that's the bit that Randall employed me to do, and I couldn't be more thrilled that I'm going to get to do it, but it's going to be incredibly difficult, but it's fun.
I'll tell you what, Derek, though, I once read, and I was again at a seminar where the NHS was talking about a particular disease, which happens to be head and neck cancer, and the cost of that treatment from the GP. So you walk into the GP, I had a lump, and the cost starts there, what they analyse in their costings. And from that moment onwards to when you become a survivor, so not beyond survivorship, so you've ended your treatment and the consultant's really happy with his or her work and they say, good luck, you're cured of cancer. That cost for someone, and it was actually someone going through the same as I did, which was radiotherapy, chemo, peg being fitted, neck dissections +2, and then all the treatment, all the wages, all the medicines cost £200,000.
Yeah, just to give listeners a little bit of context about how the NHS looks at how it spends. The NHS tends to be obsessed by unit cost of an item. So if an item, let's say an item is £10 and another version of that item is £20, twice the cost, well, they'll buy the £10 one without looking at what the impact of the £20 one is versus it. So again, using really simple numbers, if you could treat something in 18 months with the £10 one, but you could treat it in 6 months with the £20 one, then the £20 one makes more sense. It costs more initially, but it makes more sense. And making the NHS think about that and realize that, that's really, really tricky, because it's not in its nature to do that.
Is this a great preventative medicine? In other words, should this be going into dental practices, and that every time somebody sits in the dentist chair and is having their oral, annual, biannual, or whatever it is check, should they be getting a dose of regeneration from this equipment? Would that help prevent some of the issues that develop later on in life?
I think dentistry, probably, actually, Randall, you might be able to talk a bit more about dentistry in the US, but just one kind of covering line for you there, Derek. Prevention is better than cure. Oral mucositis is an appalling, debilitating condition. As we mentioned earlier, we described sort of what oral mucositis is. If we can stop a person going through that, then on a moral level alone, like Chris was just talking about, forget the money in essence, especially while we're sat talking here. On a moral level alone, if there's something out there that can stop people suffering in that manner, then they deserve to have access to it. Prevention is better than cure.
Yeah.
Randall, you'll probably be able to tell us a little bit more about dentistry in the US, certainly, because I know we've done well there.
Yeah, and I think the basic concept we're talking about is the difference between the practice of medicine and the business of medicine. And we talk a lot about this, and it's because I'm in America. In America, the medical system is about driving profit. And in the NHS medical system, it's about saving cost. Both of them end up with the same outcome in many respects, of being resistant to new things, even though we're proving that the financial model of this therapy pays off in incredible ways on that $200,000 or 200,000 pounds that Chris was talking about. And then the applications of proactive or preventative treatment, we have clients who put all their patients through a PBM treatment before surgery, and they find that bruising and edema are significantly reduced in their patients who have the pre-treatment. Post-treatment's great, but like we say, prevention is always better. And preparing the tissue for trauma is something that more ATP, less oxidative stress, prepares tissue for trauma so that it's not as affected. So yeah, there's a fantastic application of this as preventative, and that's why what we're working with, and our goal is that everyone in the UK who gets radiotherapy for head and neck cancer receives this treatment 3 days a week, starting on the first day of their radiotherapy, so that they don't have to have a feeding tube, so they don't have to try to recover and try to overcome this while they're in the middle of receiving the trauma. Always better to start out at the beginning and prevent it in the first place.
So are you saying that a patient will have it from the moment they start radiotherapy, not when they get mucositis?
That is absolutely our recommendation.
Where do you visualize this? I know every hospital is going to be different and every radiotherapy department is going to be different, but what's your vision where this sits? Do we have to have a health professional sat with them at all times?
No, is the short answer to that. There is one thing you need to be able to use THOR's equipment to deliver a photobiomodulation treatment. And that one thing you need is a plug socket. And if you've got a plug socket, you're off, you're free to go. You can spend the 5 minutes doing this wherever it is that's convenient for that individual hospital, essentially. It's great when we talk about the National Health Service to think of it as one entity, as we've kind of been talking about here. The National Health Service is, in fact, lots of tiny, tiny entities that makes up this huge one thing. So there's no hard and fast rule that what works in Lincoln is what will work in Salisbury, for example, because the buildings are different. It really does come down to as simple as that. But does the actual health professional have to be there? Remember, we're talking about lights, not lasers, for this particular treatment, for the oral mucositis treatment. So no separate room needed, no protective equipment needed, just the machine with a plug socket next to it, and 5 minutes of the patient's time to be able to administer this themselves wherever is convenient to the hospital.
This could be done sitting in the waiting room before they go into their radiotherapy treatment.
Yes, it could. There will be issues that hospitals will have around cleanliness, so we have to think very carefully, not just in COVID times. There's nothing prohibitive. Let's say that. This is really straightforward stuff. It's not prohibitive.
So what you're saying is I'm sat in one chair, Derek's in the other, and we don't share the same pieces when he's finished with it.
Well, you can use the same pieces as long as they're wiped down and cleaned.
Right.
So the hospital, this is not a consumable product. And what I mean by that is it's not the case that it's used once by one person and then it's chucked in the bin. The hospital will pay for a machine once, and then that machine is used for the patients that they have coming in.
Do you ever visualize this being in the home for a period of time? So when I was going through my treatment of radiotherapy, I don't know, let's say 6 weeks plus 3 weeks, which is what they recommend, so 9 weeks. So could that be hired out to me at home to use at home?
So it's definitely something we've considered. And as we work with the NHS and Paul builds relationships there, we're very open to that idea. We know it's safe and would be safe for people to take home. It's from a cost perspective, that's actually a more expensive solution for the NHS rather than having these machines at the cancer facilities being used by multiple patients.
But Randall, there are patients out there that are going private because they can afford to. The wealthier patients may decide, I don't want to use that one, but it's doing so good, I want to have it at home. So, and if they know there's other things that it could possibly, is it something that you would consider allowing someone to have it at home?
Yes, actually, we are a class of medical device that is safe enough and can be purchased by consumers directly that do buy this for themselves to use at home.
You're listening to the Swallows Charity Head and Neck Cancer Podcast.
I got to know Paul. He rang on the 24/7 number and I started supporting him like we support all patients. And he's quite a character. Obviously, he's had lots of problems with his treatment, and we knew he was going to go through radiotherapy. So I organised some products to help him through that. And he was having a really hard time. And anyone that's listened to his podcast will understand what I'm talking about. But through it, I would say about a week into that, obviously someone at THOR heard about that and contacted us and then started helping Paul. And the feedback, on podcasts, and it's not me saying this, but if you only got to listen to the podcast, was he thought it was fantastic that he had got, when he started to get mucositis, that's when you jumped in, and it never went any further. And not only that, his health professional, the radio-oncologist, could not believe the results, which I think stands up for itself. I don't think you need to sell it when a patient is saying it was fantastic, B, that you guys would give him that treatment for free anyway, which shows your commitment to it. But have either of you ever spoke to Paul?
Yeah, so I actually was able to connect with Paul a couple of days ago, and he's now a week and a half from completion of his therapy, and his energy's coming back, and the sparkle in his eye. Really sharp guy. Very impressed with him, and because of his relationship with you, Chris, and the Swallows, we sort of just wanted to jump in and help him personally, because frankly, that's why we all come to work every day. It's jobs and paychecks and things, but we really feel like we're on a mission to help people that have this condition. And so Paul he lives about 20 minutes from our office. We've got the machines. We're allowed to have, because we're a medical device manufacturer, despite COVID, we're allowed to have people in the office. So we taught him how to use the equipment, and he basically self-treated for the last few weeks. And when he described what he ate for dinner, I was shocked. And I think his medical staff was even more shocked that he was able to eat a normal meal, 5 weeks into his radiotherapy. They were stunned by that. And I think, obviously our feeling is the photobiomodulation therapy really helped make that happen.
Well, he didn't end up having a peg fitted, which was incredible. The hospital expected him to, because he'd had surgery beforehand, and obviously that was going to affect it. And B, he was eating, drinking. He was doing all the sort of stuff that he shouldn't be able to do. And now, I mean, I saw him only the other week, and to see him how he is incredible. If we could get every patient to go through radiotherapy like that, oh my God, what a difference. I mean, I don't want this to become an advert for you guys, but, when I spoke to Paul over that period of time, and now you see him and he's got a massive big, he's got a smile. I went to see him at his house. It's just incredible to see someone go through radiotherapy with that end result. And, I think every credit to the treatment. And that's why I'm so much for, like Derek said, making sure the NHS, this happens, because one person that goes through that experience is got to be worth trying to get it in there.
Well, and what we see in this market, there's 30 successful randomized clinical trials, the gold standard of research, that show the effectiveness of this therapy for oral mucositis. And you would think that our healthcare systems around the world would pull in these great therapies, because we're not the only one. There's lots of things for lots of different conditions like this. But that doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. And we need a guy like Paul Burns, who's here on this podcast, to push it into the NHS. But we also need guys like Paul S. telling their oncologists and their nurses that this is available and they need to investigate and find out about it. And we've got to come at it from all angles. And so for the people that are listening to this, ask us more questions, contact Paul, talk to your oncologist. That's how this is going to happen.
Paul S., if he listens to this, or those of you out there who've listened to his podcast, he probably doesn't realize how important he is. The patient voice is the singular most important voice across this entire thing we're sat here talking about. Hearing what patient experiences are. To those of you listening to this podcast, I cannot tell you enough how important that is. But I always encourage patients to be inquisitive. So ask your health professional about this. You may be listening to this as someone who's been through the journey already, and you may have recurrent oral mucositis, which I know that Chris does. This may be something that could help you, even though you're through your treatment. You're in the survivorship group. So always ask your health professional, because ultimately what always happens eventually is that someone rings me up or sends me an email and says, right, I keep hearing about this thing. I'm sick of it. So come on, tell me, what is it? And it begins the conversation. And the frustration right now is enormous that it's not available to everyone. That drives us insane. But we'll get there by banging a drum and making a load of noise.
That's great, guys. I think that's a good opportunity to sort of bring this podcast to an end. This is science fiction. And it's great. It's it's the future, and it's magic, and it's and it doesn't cost a fortune, and it should be available to everybody. And I wish you every success, Paul, in getting it into our National Health Service as quickly as you possibly can, because I think there will be lots and lots of people who will directly benefit from this.
I tell you what, Derek, when you were a kid watching black and white Star Trek, I bet you never thought you'd be here today in 2021, 100 years later, talking about it.
Sadly, no, I wasn't, and even more sadly, I was a bit older than that when I was watching Star Trek. I think we've, we will shout about it. We will raise it. We will put it into our discussions, and we'll talk to people about this particular form of treatment, and hopefully that will again create some level of awareness, which you then have to convert. Paul, that's your job, matey. You got to convert it now and make it stick for us. Randall, Paul, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. I hope it's been helpful for you guys. It's certainly been massively informative for us, and I'm sure it will be for anybody listening to this podcast, and I'm sure it will create great interest, and we wish you every success with that product.
So I just want to say, Derek and Chris, you experienced challenges and tragedy, and you've turned it into this amazing service that you provide. And it's inspiring to us on the corporate side that build equipment, that there's people like you out there that didn't just move on, but you're actually addressing the problem. And so you inspire our company to do what we do and to win in the marketplace to help the same people you're trying to help. So I just want to say thank you for your response to the challenges you faced. It's amazing and inspiring.
Thank you.
The money will be transferred afterwards, Randall. But I'd like to obviously, I've been now 9 years out of treatment in survivorship, and I've met some great companies, great people. I've known Paul a long time, but when you meet a company that puts the patient at the heart of everything, it's nice to know when a patient is put at the center of everything. It's like having a jigsaw. You can have the best jigsaw in the world and then miss one piece right in the middle. And I think the patient is that piece in the middle. And there's so many companies out there that forget that little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. I can't change my journey. I can't change Derek's journey, as much as we both moan and groan about certain things. But what we can do is change tomorrow's patient. And, I don't know whether any of you guys are old enough, or even you had it in America, but Tomorrow's World used to be on the telly. And what you're talking about is Tomorrow's World. Yeah. And I'm so excited to see Tomorrow's World. I'm just happy to be part of that. And it's fantastic. So good luck, guys.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And thank you once again to Paul and Randall, who are representatives of THOR Photomedicine and have been telling us about this magnificent new light treatment available for head and neck cancer patients. I can't wait to see it in the NHS and being available to everybody starting tomorrow. So get out there, Paul, off you go. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this particular podcast. I hope you found it interesting. If you have, please drop us a line. Tell us what you've liked about it. Share any dislikes or any subjects or topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Chris, it's that time. Having thanked our guests, it's that time for you to show what you're made of, my friend.
Okay, if you need to contact the Swallows at any time, go on the website, www.theswallows.org.uk. Send an email to info@theswallows.org.uk. On Twitter, the Swallows Group, just go on Swallows Group and follow us, or you can go on Facebook and follow one of our many pages on there. We're also on Instagram and some other weird and wonderful social media stuff that I do it, but I don't even understand how I do it. So, but our main part is our 24/7 support line. And like I always say at the end of every podcast, this is not a call center. This is genuinely the Sharon will answer the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that number is 07504 725 059. And don't forget, if you want to sponsor us, we'll always take your money. We're not embarrassed to take people's money.
Thanks very much, Chris. As usual, succinct. Well, maybe not. It brings an end to this particular podcast, folks. We look forward to talking to you again. We've got some great subjects to cover with you, some difficult subjects to cover with you, and we've got some exciting guests lined up for the future. Once again, thanks, everybody, and we look forward to talking to you again in the very near future.
You've been listening to the Swallows Charity Head and Neck Cancer Podcast. For more information, please visit www.theswallows.org.uk. We hope you'll join us again next time.